The relationship between religion and democracy took a beating on January 6th.
The balance between religion and democracy needs to remain strong.
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
I'm James Weingardner in for Jerry Lutz. We are still in some COVID restrictions, and so we have got our smaller panel that we are using during this COVID time. Everybody seems to have their mask here, and it's good to be together anyway. And so we get to begin with a really important topic, but before we do, we'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves to you, beginning with Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. We're a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am an Episcopal priest and I'm canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Carl Troval. I'm professor of history and ethics at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Well, this is an important subject, and it's a subject around which our program here has always been focused. The religion and government have always had an opportunity to interact. In American history, religion and democracy have held each other in a distinct and at times a peculiar balance, perhaps even a slightly awkward dance. The charter of the American Religious Town Hall has always provided space for that dance and respect for the diverse patterns within it and for the mutual self-restraint on the part of both religion and government that makes it noteworthy in human history. But what happens when one of the dancers loses all sense of balance or partnership and opts out? This is the question asked by one of our viewers following the insurrection at the Capitol on January the 6th. This viewer specifically wanted our panel to discuss how the heritage of religion's appreciation for democracy could survive and thrive against what she calls the Christian nationalist movement that seems to undermine democracy. Thomas Edsall, writing in the New York Times on January 28, 2021, asks much the same question. He makes the point that many religious folk are no longer interested in persuading the public of their moral convictions and have chosen instead to seek to enforce behavioral standards by law and, for a few, even by force. The Christian flag, numerous crosses, and various signs and flags declaring who Jesus surely voted for were prominent in the crowd that breached the Capitol steps. And Bibles were waved even as police officers were being beaten, guns were brandished, and nooses readied for members of Congress of both parties. The Times article quoted one Tennessee preacher just before the November election who said, "We are one election away from losing everything we hold dear. This is a battle against everything evil and wicked in the world. This means war." Our questions today: should this sort of movement be combated, and if so, how? Was the insurrection of January 6th only an outlier or an unfortunate event or even a staged event to be hurried past in an effort for national unity? And what's happening in local faith communities, on college campuses and elsewhere, to help people understand what's happening between faith and democracy and what to do about it? And now we're looking forward to hearing from you, Tom.
Thank you. You know, what happened on January 6th was an unprecedented event in American history. It had been since 1814 in the War of 1812 when the British took over and burned the Capitol building of the United States. that anybody had taken that building, attacked that building even, and for the attack to have come from American citizens was particularly grieving. And it's something that I think we are going to have to deal with for quite some time. And part of the conversation needs to be within the faith community, particularly within the Christian community. You know, after 9/11, there were numerous calls for imams, for every imam in the country to stand up and say, you know, this was not true Islam. There was all sorts of pressure, and every time they said it, nobody paid any attention to the fact that they had said it, and just kept requiring them to say it more and more. Well, the same needs to go for Christian clergy now, with all of the obscene flags and posters and waving of the Bible and the things that you describe in your moderator's statement that were visible and obvious in the crowd, that somehow some people thought this was the Christian thing to do. Christian clergy, Christian leadership throughout the country needs to stand up and say, this was wrong. Now, fortunately, some of that has started to happen. It was very interesting to me to see how even some very conservative Christian voices like World Magazine and Russell Moore from the Southern Baptist Convention used words like apostasy and heresy for that kind of so-called Christian thinking. And Christianity Today never ever associated with the liberal side of the Christian faith. Christianity Today carried their headline article on the day said, "We worship with the Magi, not MAGA, not Make America Great Again." Part of the irony of the whole thing was that January 6th is the day of Epiphany, when much of the Christian world is celebrating the spreading of God's light through the person of the Christ. And here we had these people supposing themselves to be Christian, taking on the banner of Christianity and doing such obscene acts.
Dan?
So I think we can all agree that the events of January 6th were among the most tragic in modern American history. But one of the things that I think we also have to remember is that American democracy is built on two ideas. One is conflict is written into the system, and so is compromise. The system is designed for people who look at things through vastly different lenses to come together and to argue vociferously about their differences, and then to find a way to compromise where I don't get everything I want, I get some of what I want. So how do you operate in a system like that? And that's where I think religion plays such a crucial role, because I'm not sure you can have democracy without religion. Because religion and American democracy go hand in hand, because in order to have democracy, you need character. You need morality. You need people who will take personal responsibility to do the right thing. And I think that there are so many ways in which religious tradition can create the atmosphere where democracy thrives. Because when we boil down what my religious tradition teaches, your religious traditions teach, they all sort of come down to the same sense. One is that none of us has a monopoly on the truth. And that's why we need to approach our world with curiosity and with humility and with love and with compassion, even as we are trying to devote ourselves towards that pursuit of the truth that is sometimes so elusive. We all come from a place where we think differently. We think differently about the role of government in our lives. We think differently about how we should take care of the poor and the stranger and the vulnerable. We have to figure out the balances between all of these really crucial and important religious questions. And so that's why it's so important for religion to stand up, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and all of their different expressions, to say, actually, what happened on January 6th was profane. It was profane. And it was profane because it was preaching an idea that is antithetical not simply to democracy, but to religion itself.
Thank you, Carl.
You opened up, thank you very much, Dan. You opened up exactly what I was going to say, is that I think that this is also dangerous for religion, to make any kind of identification with any sort of political movement so tightly that you make the religion and the belief system equivalent to the religion. I mean, this, at least from my Christian perspective, this is a real danger to the gospel. I mean, the gospel is about service. It's about love of others. It's about nonviolence in its highest ideals. It's about all of these things that we're shaping people to be, and to then be connected with a movement that is openly anti-Semitic, white supremacist, and I realize not everyone there was that, but those flags were all out there. To associate Christianity with all of these really terrible other movements, not to mention connecting and putting religion right next to violence as it occurred, to me, what it's doing is it's completely undermining the authority of Christianity. Again, speaking as a Christian, if we're people who stand up for truth, and then 3 out of 5 white evangelicals say that Joe Biden was not legitimately elected, I mean, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up essentially to say, I'm the religion of a lie, and we believe lies before we believe the truth. And that, to me, it just endangers any kind of authority that you have to speak the truth to people.
John?
Well, where does one begin to respond to your moderator's statement? I think it's always dangerous when religion and government wraps itself in each other's blanket. And I think that we certainly have that happening here. But I also want to respond to make what Tom said to be just a little bit more technically. What you have here really is white supremacy. What you have here is white supremacy, or what is called Christian nationalism. And here, to be able to wrap that part of Christianity, which I would argue is anti the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's nothing in Christian nationality that at all, or nationalist movement, that reflects the gospel of Jesus Christ. Full stop. And I don't think it reflects anything in relationship to the Jewish tradition either, as you have just really said, Dan. So I think that we have here really a conflict of what we consider to be even parts of our religious tradition. And we have to call it for what it is. For what happened that day, I agree with everything that's been said around this table, but what happened that day was certainly anti-Jewish, it was anti-Muslim, it was anti-Christian, Buddhist, Hindu. It doesn't stand for the values of the faith and whatever faith tradition that we have. So it seems to me that we really have to examine ourselves here and where we fit into that type of nationalism. Because if we do not, we're going to see this continuously happen.
Amen.
And I can only say that what happened that day distorts not only democracy, but it distorts Christian faith and tradition as well.
Yeah, one of the articles I read, in fact, in response to what you said, John and Carl both. One of the articles that I read said that the immediate impact of what people saw in that is feeding what the article called a tide of secularization in this country. If we think we've got problems with, to use a Christian word, evangelism, if we think we got problems with getting the word out to the larger society and changing people's lives, this is moving things in the opposite direction of that, and we've got to take notice. We've got to change what's going on in our own hearts and in our own congregations and in our own faith groups.
Certainly, there's no place in any of our traditions that will say, hang Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence. Yeah. I mean, you don't hang the president, vice president of the United States.
Or perhaps anyone else, Dan.
Or anyone else.
I think what happened on January 6th was just, I think, the tip of the iceberg of a phenomenon that's going on in American society, which I think is really, in your moderator statement, I think what you indicated was the most dangerous. This maximalist idea that we're right and you're the enemy. This idea that in this compact that we call America, that the people who are on the other side of whatever divide it is that I create around myself are not just my neighbors who look at things differently or other patriots of goodwill, but when someone says, and believe me, this was on both sides of the election argument, right? We are one election away from losing everything we hold dear. I can tell you that was not just on the right. That was also on the left. But when you start saying that, well, I won't let my child marry a Democrat or a Republican, which we're hearing, there are people who'd say, I'm okay with my child not marrying someone of my faith tradition, but not if they better be from our party. And there's a debate in the Talmud 2,000 years ago. There were two schools of thought. There was Hillel and Shammai, who were on opposite. They were the Republicans and the Democrats of their day. But what the Talmud talks about is that even though there was an argument that went on for 3 years between them, where it occasionally even turned violent, they still would say, you could marry my kid. And so I think we need to get to a place, not where we necessarily have to give our children over to marriage, but that where we realize my neighbor could be on the other party and I can still have a barbecue with that person. That person may practice a different faith tradition than me, but what matters is character. What matters is forbearance. What matters is decency and kindness. And I think that those are the religious messages that, frankly, we need to amplify a little bit stronger.
I thank you for all of the discussion. It's been very helpful. On a positive side, I think one of the things, one of the questions that's asked is, what are we doing in our faith communities? And Concordia is a faith-based institution. And one of the things that we want to do for our students is to connect both the faith and the political and to unpack this from psychological, sociological, different points of communications, different points of view. And we had, I think, an incredible discussion. We had a number of students and faculty tune in to just hear different perspectives on what happened, and just to build and foster, not to be there to just get negative, but to ask what's going on and how can we move forward from that place. And I found it to be very, very helpful.
We have this is a fascinating subject because it's unprecedented what we've recently just seen. The faith tradition that I'm a part of, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, has long been an advocate for the separation of church and state. And we have organized groups that work on that subject. And we've always said that history has demonstrated that any time that church and state unite, bad things ensue, very bad things. And so we're with this. The real question that we might want to talk about in our summations is, what does it look like going forward for us to stand together against the assimilation of government and religion together? But we'll do that after the break.
We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you and today's closing statements.
Please feel free to write, to email, to call, to let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear about. And this is a subject that's dear to my heart, and I know that many of you agree. So let's do our summations now, beginning again with Tom.
Thank you. Just at the end of our conversation, you asked us to talk in our summations about where we go from here in terms of strengthening our nation and our religious, the interconnection between religion and democracy. I think what we need is already there. We just need to go back to our own Constitution, the Constitution of the United States, and to read carefully the First Amendment to it, which has 2 religion clauses, not just one, 2 religion clauses. It says, Congress shall make no law restricting or providing for an establishment of religion or restricting the free exercise thereof. So the 2 clauses, establishment and free exercise. What's happened is that through the overemphasis of free exercise of religion, some have gotten to the place where the pendulum has swung too far, and we're ready to establish not just Christianity, but a certain form of Christianity as the acceptable religion, the only acceptable religion, the preferred religion within our country. So the building blocks for change are already there.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree completely. I also think that a lot of us are not aware of how deeply this desire to bring church and state together is, that it's I mean, ever since John Winthrop said, a city on a hill, like this is the Protestant Mecca, right? And this is like we're chosen from God, and so there's this immediate association with our political system and some divine right to do whatever we want. And I think that this lie continues to infect us. And I mean, I think that's what the Constitution is trying to do, is try to snip that and to try to control it. But of course, that thing is so deep. It takes constant education, conversation, asking questions. And I also genuinely believe that just to sometimes come out and oppose people actually makes people go deeper into their falsehood, and that it's time to ask questions, to listen, to say, well, what are the consequences of what you're saying, and how will this play out, and how does that affect your life, and how are you doing personally? Why are you so wrapped up in this thing here? I don't understand. To do that, because I think that's where we're going to move forward on that one-to-one level. So I'll just contribute that.
Thank you.
I think that one of the things that's wonderful about our different faith traditions is that it promotes some sense of certainty, right? But there are certain certainties that I think we need to really bring to the forefront of our consciousness. One is, I can be very much certain in what I believe, but I also need to be certain that I am flawed and I am limited and that I have no monopoly on the truth. And so I think we need to learn how to replace certainty with curiosity. And I think also that what you saw on Capitol Hill and in the weeks leading up to that event after the election was an abandonment of what democracy is. There have been lots of times I woke up the day after an election and I was elated. And lots of times I've woken up the day after an election and I've been saddened. And when I've been saddened, I woke up and I said, I guess I better do a better job of trying to convince my fellow Americans that what I think is right, as opposed to enforcing. Gandhi taught that once you start imposing violence to try to promote your truths, you will lose all perspective in the truth.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
I just want to give a reference to an organization that has grown up as a result of what's happened, called Christians Against Christian Nationalism. And that is a very good resource to be able to look at to deal with exactly the problems that we've been discussing around the table. And I suspect you could put in Jews against Christian nationalism, and et cetera, whatever. So I think that that is a very important thing. I want to speak about Michael Gershon. Michael Gershon was the speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and he was also named the 9th most influential evangelicals in America. And he's taken a very strong stand in opposition to what is going on. And one of the things that he says is that in the evangelical movement, and as well as in Christianity per se, one of the most important things is always a consistent and comprehensive concern for the weak and the vulnerable in our society, including the poor, immigrants, and refugees. And when we lose focus of that, and when we do not have that as our major concern in this country, that really becomes a part of our own sin today, as we do not respond to those critical needs in our nation.
Wow, we have, this is the subject about which this program was created 60 years ago. And it's a really important question. We really, really thank you guys for your thoughts on this and continue to think about it so that we can lead others in this subject. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. The rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America, we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And now, friends, until next week, at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.